The lights of the massive stage burned bright against the darkness of the audience, reflecting on a young boy's trembling hands as he clutched a cheap, worn-out microphone. His name was Ethan Miller, 14 years old, skinny as a stick, and wearing a faded hoodie 2 sizes too big. The crowd, thousands strong, waited impatiently, whispering among themselves. It was another day of auditions for America's Brightest Star, and contestants came from every corner of the country to chase dreams. But when Ethan walked out, no one expected much. The judges, seated behind their glittering table, exchanged skeptical glances. Simon, the strict one, folded his arms. Miranda, the compassionate singer, offered a polite smile, and the third judge, Tony, tapped his pen, glancing at his watch. To them, the boy looked nervous, too young, too fragile, and far from ready for a stage this big. "What are you going to sing for us today?" Miranda asked softly, leaning forward. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice cracking as he whispered, "I'll sing a song for my mom." The room went silent for a moment. "Is she here with you?" Tony asked, scanning the crowd. Ethan hesitated, shaking his head. "No, sir, she's in the hospital." A soft murmur spread through the audience. The judges straightened slightly. Something about his tone, his broken honesty, felt different, real. Then the gentle strumming of the piano track began, and Ethan took a shaky breath before opening his mouth. His voice was fragile at first, quiet, uncertain, almost trembling, but there was something haunting in the way it floated through the room. Within seconds, the atmosphere shifted. Every whisper, every cough, every movement in the crowd vanished. His voice, pure, cracked, but soaked in raw emotion, wrapped around every ear and went straight into every heart. He sang, "You are my sunshine," but not the happy version. It was slow, aching, filled with longing. The melody seemed to tell the story of a child who had lost everything but still held on to hope. As he sang, a single tear rolled down his cheek, but he didn't stop. His eyes were fixed on the empty front row seat, the one he had reserved for his mother, though she couldn't be there. When he reached the final verse, his voice broke entirely, but instead of faltering, he whispered the last words, his lips trembling, "Please don't take my sunshine away." When the music stopped, there was a silence so deep it almost hurt to breathe. The judges didn't move. The audience didn't clap. They were frozen, completely consumed by the depth of that boy's pain. Then Miranda covered her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. Tony turned away, blinking hard. Even Simon, the man known for his iron heart, swallowed deeply and looked down. "Ethan," Miranda whispered, voice trembling, "that was the most beautiful thing I've heard in years." The crowd suddenly erupted into a standing ovation. People were crying, cheering, shouting his name. Ethan just stood there, stunned, holding the mic tightly as if it were the only thing keeping him standing. Simon finally spoke, voice low and rough, "Kid, that wasn't just a song. That was your soul." The audience roared again, and Miranda pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above, raining down like tiny sparks of heaven as Ethan covered his face and sobbed. The judges stood, clapping through tears. It was the kind of moment television dreams are made of, but behind that glittering confetti was a story few knew, one that began long before Ethan ever stood on that stage. Ethan and his mother, Claire, had always been a team. His father had left when Ethan was 4, and his mother worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses by day, serving coffee by night, just to keep food on the table. Music had been their escape. She used to hum lullabies to him when he couldn't sleep, and as he grew older, he'd sing to her after her long shifts. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and their small, shared dream. Someday, Ethan would sing on a big stage, and she'd be in the front row, cheering. But life had other plans. 2 years before that audition, Claire was diagnosed with heart failure. Hospital bills piled up. They sold their furniture, their TV, even Ethan's old guitar. He sang on the streets of downtown Chicago, a worn cap on the ground, earning just enough to buy her medicine. Some nights, strangers would stop and listen, others walked by, pretending not to see him. But Ethan never stopped. "Mom, I'm going to make it," he would say every night, sitting by her hospital bed, holding her frail hand. "And when I do, you'll be there." She'd smile weakly, brushing his hair back. "You already made it, baby. You've got the kindest heart in the world." When Ethan heard about the auditions for America's Brightest Star, he hesitated. The fee alone was more than they had, and the idea of standing before thousands terrified him. But his mother pushed him gently. "Promise me you'll try," she whispered one night. "Promise me you won't give up." So he went, borrowing a friend's bus pass and carrying a small lunch in a paper bag. He stood in line for hours, surrounded by people with expensive clothes and professional instruments. Some laughed at his old shoes and taped-up guitar, but he didn't care. All he thought about was his mom, lying in that hospital bed, watching from afar. When his number was finally called, his heart nearly gave out. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and stepped onto that massive stage, and sang like the world was listening. After his golden buzzer moment, everything changed overnight. News outlets flooded the story. "Poor boy from Chicago stuns the world." People around the globe watched the video, crying, sharing, commenting that his voice brought back faith in humanity. Donations poured in from fans wanting to help his mother. Within days, the hospital called Ethan. "Your mother's surgery has been fully funded." He collapsed to his knees, unable to speak, tears soaking the phone. When he visited her that evening, she was sitting up for the first time in weeks, smiling through weak tears. "You did it, Ethan," she whispered. "You saved me." But Ethan just held her hand and said, "No, Mom. You saved me first." The bond between them became the heart of every interview, every news headline. But what touched people most wasn't just his voice, it was his humility. Even after fame found him, he returned to the same street corner where he once sang for coins, this time to raise money for other sick kids whose families couldn't afford treatment. "Someone believed in me," he said during one live performance. "Now I want to be that someone for others." But one unexpected moment would define his life forever. A few months later, during the live finale of America's Brightest Star, Ethan was set to perform again, this time in front of millions watching around the world. Backstage, as he adjusted his mic, Miranda walked over, sensing his nerves. "You okay?" she asked gently. Ethan nodded, forcing a smile. "Just hoping Mom can stay awake long enough to see this." Miranda's eyes softened. "She will," she said. "She's stronger than you know." Then Ethan stepped out again under the blinding lights. The crowd went wild. He began a new song, one he'd written himself, titled, "Home Again." The lyrics told the story of love surviving hardship, of a boy promising his mother that one day, they'd sit together in the sunlight again. As he sang, the camera cut to the hospital, where Claire, now recovering, watched from her bed, tears streaming down her face. When the final note faded, the entire audience was standing again, clapping and crying. The judges, once more, were in tears. But Ethan looked up, not at them, but at the sky, whispering, "Thank you." Later that night, Ethan won the competition. But what he said during his acceptance speech became one of the most replayed moments in television history. Standing on that glittering stage, trophy in hand, he looked into the camera and said, "This isn't my victory. This belongs to every kid who sings on the streets, to every mom who sacrifices everything, to everyone who still believes love can change a life." The crowd erupted. Even Simon, holding back tears, said into the mic, "You reminded us what this show is supposed to be about, heart, not fame." The world fell in love with the boy who had nothing but gave everything. Months later, Ethan and his mother moved into a small apartment near the hospital where she continued her recovery. But fame never changed him. He volunteered at shelters, sang at charity events, and often visited the children's ward to sing lullabies. People who met him said he carried an aura, something gentle yet powerful, like sunlight after a storm. One evening, while performing at a benefit concert for children with heart conditions, Ethan noticed a young girl sitting in the front row, bald from chemotherapy, clutching a small teddy bear. After his song, he walked straight to her, knelt down, and handed her the mic. "Want to sing with me?" She nodded shyly. Together, they sang, "You Are My Sunshine." The entire hall wept. That clip went viral again. Millions watched as the once poor boy, now a rising star, shared his light with another child fighting for her life. As years passed, Ethan's music career blossomed, but he never forgot where he came from. In every concert, he reserved one empty seat in the front row, for his mother, whether she could attend or not. He established the Claire Foundation, providing instruments and lessons for underprivileged kids who dreamed of music. Reporters often asked him, "What's the secret behind your songs?" He always smiled and replied, "They're all love letters to my mom, and to everyone who gave me hope when I had none." One morning, years after his first audition, Ethan returned to the same theater where it had all begun. The stage was empty, quiet. Dust floated through the beams of sunlight coming through the ceiling. He stood in the center, remembering that scared, skinny boy who once trembled holding the mic. A tear slipped down his cheek. "You made it, kid," he whispered to himself. Behind him, Miranda's voice echoed softly, she had come to see him again. "You changed more lives than you'll ever know." Ethan turned, smiling humbly. "Maybe, but I think they changed mine first." That night, as the theater lights dimmed, he sang once more, not for fame, not for cameras, but for the memory of every person who had ever believed in him. The echo of his voice filled the empty hall, soft and golden. And somewhere, far beyond the lights, his mother's whisper seemed to answer, "You'll always be my sunshine." The story of Ethan Miller became a symbol around the world, not of talent alone, but of perseverance, kindness, and the quiet power of love. He reminded millions that sometimes the greatest songs are not written in studios or sung for fame. They're born in pain, carried by hope, and shared through hearts that refuse to give up. He showed that compassion could turn strangers into family, that a single act of belief could rewrite a destiny. And in the end, when people remembered him, they didn't just talk about the golden buzzer or the awards. They remembered the boy who sang his truth so purely that even the hardest hearts broke, and were healed.